All right. So what happened to your wrist, Isaac?
Yeah, Alex. Well, it's kind of a workplace injury, I guess. Yeah, no. So over the last few weeks, when I was golfing, I just noticed like halfway through the round or so, my wrist essentially was in unbearable pain. So then last weekend, I'm golfing there, and my mom wrapped it for me with like a compression tape or whatever, and it fixed it. So she's like, "Oh, you got carpal tunnel," which is diagnosed from my mother. Keep in mind, who isn't a medical professional, although in fairness, I would trust my family to diagnose me more so than a medical professional in many instances. So yeah, I guess I have carpal tunnel. So my wrist is always in pain, which sucks because I'm moving my mouse around too much, I guess. So yeah, you guys think it's easy working at True North? No, we're going through the injuries. But yeah, my name's Isaac Lamoureux. I'm here joined by my colleagues Alex Zoltan and Walid Tamtam, and let's just hop right into it. Yeah, so I'm sure everyone's seen at least one of the many, many videos circulating on the social medias around the last week around these drivers, these semi-truck drivers on the highways. I mean, take your pick at the video. We see these guys on their phones, and this all kind of surfaced, I guess, from one driver who made an illegal U-turn and I think killed 3 people. Because I mean, you guys saw the video. It was sick. It was terrible stuff. And anyone I think who's been on a Canadian highway recently might have noticed some issues with semi-truck drivers. In fact, just a week or two ago myself, I was on the highway there and I saw a semi-truck flipped. It seems like we're seeing that more and more often. And we see all these stories coming out about these temporary immigrants coming in essentially through these questionable driving schools, some of which are just completely falsified documents, and then they're driving on the road. Alex, you've cited before, there was this one truck driver apparently who hadn't even driven before, and he was driving a semi on the road. So I mean, what's going on with these truck drivers here? It just seems to get worse and worse.
So there's a lot going on. Our friends over at Juno News did a really great interview with a friend of mine, Gord McGill, and he's literally writing the book on this. He's a very experienced trucker. I think he has decades of experience. I think he might be the only person in the history of the world to have driven in Nunavut and Australia as a truck driver, which is pretty cool. He has lots of neat stories about that. So he has a lot of knowledge, not only of trucking, but of the industry itself. He's a real kind of rabbit hole type guy. And this has been going on for a very long time. In fact, it even goes back to pre-pandemic. So there was a really great article in the Globe and Mail by a journalist named Kathy Tomlinson, who we just can't find anymore. I don't know what happened to her. I hope she's doing well. But she wrote about how there is a really strange nexus going on in Canada specifically between immigration consultants who may or may not be doing things that are unscrupulous at best and criminal at worst. And what they do is they offer folks primarily in the Punjab province of India temporary working status in Canada. In exchange, they have to do some type of job. A lot of these folks don't even know what their job is going to be until they land in Canada, and then they get sent to a driving school who are, again, these driving schools are very unscrupulous and not very reputable and are not necessarily giving people the training that they probably need. And so you have a whole bunch of folks who come to Canada. Some of them have never driven cars before. And now they're sliding down ice roads in Saskatchewan at like 100 kilometers an hour with like an 18-wheeler truck. The results are predictably disastrous. And I think that Canadians are rightfully outraged, and Americans too now with this new case in Florida.
Yeah, to be fair, Saskatchewan is far from the worst roads in Canada. That's mostly flat. Imagine you're driving in BC on ice roads and those windy roads around the mountains. I mean, that is just a nightmare for anyone, let alone someone in a big truck. Yeah, Walid, have you seen these videos circulating? And do you have any thoughts, I guess, on these truckers?
I do have thoughts, and I have seen these videos, and unfortunately I've seen many of these videos, and I've seen this trend as a reaction to many of these videos with any large vehicle. It could be a truck, or it could even be a bus from any public transportation agency in Canada. You will see an accident of any sort, and you'll have the comment section full of people inquiring on where that driver is from, most of the time looking at if that person happens to be, as Alex said, from the Punjab region of India, which happens to be the trend, very common these days in North America, especially here in Canada. So that being the concern of people in the public, so often the case, it tells you that there's a story and there's a failure of public policy. On the public policy question, Monday morning, you and I were talking, Isaac, on the Daily Brief on Monday about the gun confiscation program and how it's failed to really render any results positive towards the public security agenda, which is how it's always been framed to Canadians. Cars and vehicles are killing machines far greater than that of any kinds of guns, be it assault rifles or handguns, legal and illegal combined. So if you're talking about 18-wheelers and buses and all kinds of heavy vehicles, I think you're talking about, and without properly licensed and trained and experienced drivers, I think you're talking about a security risk that outranks that of any weapon, frankly. It's the single most dangerous thing on the roads these days are untrained truck drivers. And of course, as we saw tragically in recent times, we can see situations that take lives of families, multiple at once, given the size and strength that these vehicles have, especially when operated at high speeds on a highway, for example. So my thoughts are that of most Canadians that this has to be dealt with. Clearly, this is so common that if it's becoming a Twitter trend to ask what people's ethnic and national backgrounds are based on a vehicle accident involving a truck driver, I think it tells you that maybe there's something a bit too common that has to be dealt with sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, Walid. It made me think of a question. Would you rather be shot by a gun or hit by an 18-wheeler on the highway? Of course, the irony in that statement is that the gun ban is not targeting any legal gun owners because they're all smuggled in from the States. So it's not really a fair comparison in that sense. But
can I pick neither?
Not if you live in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a crazy situation, right? I mean, the 2024, I think, was an all-time high for roadside fatalities in Canada. That seems really strange, especially when you consider that vehicles are getting safer with technology, right? There should be less accidents, not more. So I think this is another case of government making things worse.
That's true, Alex. In new cars, I don't know how effective this would be on a highway, but it will literally stop you from hitting something. Like if you're parking, and it'll force the brakes on you because it has that level of technology. So we're getting to a stage where you would expect accidents to be less and less through technology and automation. It's essentially enhancing safety. But obviously, that's not the case if we keep seeing these numbers rise. Another
friend of the show, Mocha, I don't know did you guys see the interview he did with the Canadian trucker, where the foul-mouthed trucker?
I did not, but I know Mocha's work.
Walid, what did you think?
Well, you referred to the interview with the Punjab driver. I mean, at least I think he immigrated himself quite a while back, actually.
No, he was born in Canada, but he's a brown guy. But yeah,
okay. But he is Indian of background, so he does kind of attest to this question of culture and integration. I mean, I think it points to a wider question, frankly, that, like, I am willing to forgo the fact that there are very much innocent individuals involved in this dynamic of people that don't know what they're doing and are just being led into stray, by immigration consultants and their partners in business. But I also think, frankly, there's some bad decision making by some of these individuals as well, accepting these opportunities and taking them as their best shot, because really we're talking about deadly consequences here. Their own lives and lives of other people. And once you get behind the wheel, you're responsible, whether you're, a native born or foreign born, whether you think Canada is the dreamland or if you think it's in decline. I mean, frankly, there just should not be this reality. But referring to the interview itself, I really do think it's something that's been more recent, because Canada has had an influx of migrants, pretty high levels for a long time, and India included. But we're really getting perhaps the worst batch. And that batch is happening to fall into the trucker industry unlike ever before. Like, I've never seen this. Like, how many people were importing for these kinds of jobs specifically? Like, I don't think we've had something like this in history before. It's a really new issue with a new dynamic. And of course, the social reactions as well are quite new as well.
Yeah, and we're talking here about the truckers, but I felt for forever almost, I guess, that we need stronger regulations when it comes to imported drivers on the consumer side. That being, like, if someone from China just moves here, in my opinion, you shouldn't just be able to hop on the road and drive. I see these types of people driving, and certainly I know for a fact they did not pass the same driving tests I did as a Canadian. I just know that there's no possible way based on the way they drive. And I know these tests aren't easy, especially before when we had in Alberta, the non-GDL and the GDL stuff. That's been abolished since, so it has gotten a bit easier. But I do think nationally, or I guess it's provincially, but I always have felt we need a bit more. Like, I don't know the regulations, to be fair, but I just feel like if someone moves here from anywhere, they should have to have a more strict guidelines in regard to, like, road tests, just for a normal person.
Isaac, I mean, talking about that for a second, earlier this month on the 7th, I covered a story about the Driver Center Ontario. In Ontario, they offer the written portion, the G1 test with signage and regulations on the road in more than 30 languages, including Punjabi and Somali and Hindi and Arabic. I mean, a bunch of languages. So it seems that speaking English, frankly, is not even a requirement at that stage. So perhaps even that has to change. And we're talking about drivers of trucks or of cars, of motorcycles, just the baseline, frankly. So I think even that needs to change, just for the sake of future road security. There should definitely be a standard of greater literacy, I think.
Well, in Vancouver, we're renaming every street in languages that nobody can speak anyway, so I'm sure they'll be just fine. But with the rest of the country, I tend to agree. You also have the issue as well where these people are paying tens of thousands of dollars to come to Canada, and then these companies are taking full advantage of them because they're hanging this PR carrot over their head. And so this is really actually kind of an indentured servitude program. So there's kind of two things going on at once. Canadians are all made less safe, and these immigrants are also being taken advantage of. So, I have my sympathy for the victims of these crashes outweigh my sympathy for the drivers, but there is still a little bit of heartstring that is tugged by the.
Yeah, Alex, that sounds like a lose-lose situation. But hopping into our next story, more of a win-lose situation. Lose for me and Albertans, but win for Eastern provinces for siphoning money out of Alberta, which Danielle Smith, the Premier here, was absolutely freaking out about at a recent town hall there in Fort McMurray on Tuesday. Do we want to just watch the clip of that before we go ahead here?
Ottawa overtaxing us. I mentioned that at the beginning of the evening, that our program costs are 70% of all tax dollars. We only collect 40%. Ottawa collects 60%, and then they use political means to transfer it. Alberta, year after year, has $20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years. $600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it in places that vote Liberal. That is what is happening in the province and in the country.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Smith is obviously super mad there, saying that the feds are draining $25 billion a year through tax transfers from Alberta, essentially to benefit Liberal strongholds, that being Ontario and Quebec, at Alberta's expense. And I mean, there was lots of things that Smith and her panelists covered at this town hall, because I listened to it more fully. It's like a 3-hour conference, but I did listen to it. For example, I'll highlight a few other things that were, in my eyes, key. Economist Trevor Toome, he said that if Quebec just upped their hydro rates by 2 cents per kilowatt, 2 cents, that an equalization payments would fall by $4.2 billion a year. And from what I understand, from what I've heard in other town halls, and Toom speak about it before, they're already charging under market values, and they're mad at Quebec too, because essentially Quebec's keeping its gas in the ground with former premiers there citing they don't want to take it out because their equalization payments would go down. So it's all about essentially Canada, through its equalization system as it exists right now, has created a welfare system where if Quebec actually improved its own economy, it would lose out more than it gains just because of how equalization is. So it's a pretty bad situation to be in. Smith said that over the last 40 or 50 years, Alberta has had $600 billion taken out of the province. So, I mean, this is an insane amount of money. She said that Albertans lose $5,000 per year due to these political transfers. Although, one more thing I'll highlight is this was something super interesting that might have been missed there in the conference. But Smith said that before, essentially all the premiers around the premiers tables, she said, has done a complete 180 over the last year, because before, she said about a year ago, they were talking about how do we stop the federal government from beating us down? Terrible law after terrible law, she said. And now she's saying, how do we stop the federal government from picking on Alberta? So I don't know if more premiers are kind of rallying around Alberta because they felt a bit more of the pain themselves from the Feds. So now they're like, wow, if we're only getting beat down this little and it hurts this bad, I can't imagine what Alberta's going through. Did you guys pay attention to any of this town hall or see Smith's comments circulating there?
I have actually. I actually like the fact that she kind of continued on this whole regional bias differences. I mean, she was asked, I think it was on the same town hall, she was asked, because, she's done many of these, of course. I mean, this isn't the first and probably won't be the last of these town halls, but she spoke about her aspirations of being prime minister. She said she wasn't interested in looking at the job at the moment. And one of the reasons why is because she's just really happy with her current job as Premier of Alberta, because as Premier of Alberta, she doesn't have to fight for votes in Toronto and Montreal. And looking at Toronto, Montreal, more progressive, liberal-leaning areas, you have the agendas to do with, drug decriminalization. You have social wokeness. You have, kind of an anti-economic development or anti-resource development agenda from the environmentalist edge. So, for someone like Danielle Smith, being an Albertan and being the Premier of Alberta is a liberating sense that allows her to really articulate herself and go forward with the view that she actually does have and maintain. It goes to question, if there is really this much difference between the West and East in the country, then how much integrity can a prime minister of any kind really have if they have to bring that much difference together under one shared union? I mean, at some point, there's going to have to be some capitulation one side or the other, because you cannot win an election purely off the West, but you can win an election off the big cities. So it does bring a question of regional unity and exactly what kind of conservative government we could even see, given the demographic and seat count distribution of the day. So we'll see. But I think it's definitely very much her right to be leading these town halls with the tone of voice that she has of continued frustration towards Ottawa, because I really do think that perhaps there could be a rallying cry from the neighboring provinces as well. And perhaps you could see some change to that formula. But I don't see there any way possible that Quebec would want to drop that deal. I mean, like you said, Isaac, billions of dollars in economic potential they have under the ground. As long as they unlock it, or as long as they don't unlock it, they continue to get free money from Ottawa. If they do unlock it, they lose money overall. So it tells you the formula is broken against the best interests of not only Alberta, but maybe even Quebec and other provinces for the long-term future, if there is a crack in the union one day.
Yeah, Walid, you said you can't win an election federally just from the West, but you certainly can from the East. Almost, my memory of every single federal election I've ever watched is that they call the winner of the election before Alberta's even counted. So it really doesn't matter what we say. And Smith here kind of highlighting the discrepancy between the importance, I guess, among politicians of the residents of the West versus the East. Yeah, what do you think, Alex? You're obviously a neighboring province resident.
Yeah, by the time the election results reach BC, it's like the next day. The new prime minister is usually doing his victory speech at that point. Yeah, I think that Walid makes a really great point in terms of like what's left in the ground, because I think that these equalization payments pale in comparison to the opportunity cost of Alberta not being able to export its natural resources to Tidewater, whether that's BC blocking it or Quebec or whoever that happens to be. I think it's interesting. I think it was one of you gentlemen who wrote an article that 70% of Canadians, I think just prior to the election, were actually in favor of building a transnational pipeline in Canada. And I think a lot of that was really underpinned by people's distaste, I guess you could say, for Donald Trump. So I think that Danielle Smith, if I was kind of in the war room, I think that one of the strategies she could consider employing is uniting the country around their, whether it's rational or not, their dislike of Donald Trump, because nothing brings people together quite like a common enemy. Of course, the issue there is that she risks alienating her base, many of whom like Trump more than they like her for various reasons. But I think that's kind of an interesting strategy that she might consider employing over the next 3 years and what's left of Donald Trump's second term.
Yeah, I mean, the talk about pipelines has been heating up forever, but nothing really gets done. A lot of things are said. I mean, for example, when I was at the APP event recently, the legal counsel for the Alberta Prosperity Project, Jeffrey Rath, he was bashing Ontario Premier Doug Ford for not even knowing where his oil comes from. He said, look, this guy doesn't even know there's not that our oil has to go through the United States to get to Ontario. Like, you don't even understand that. So how can you be advocating for a pipeline when you don't even understand that there isn't one that goes across Canada? I think Stephen Guilbeault made the same error. So really, when these Eastern politicians talk a big game, they don't even know where gas comes from. It's all talk, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, for our next story, trying to think of how to transition it here, but we might not be knowing where these guys are coming from. Yeah, so we're seeing, again, videos pop up on X, online, of these thieves just walking around, taking things willy-nilly, absolutely no accountability, no fear, broad daylight, just going into stores and racking up tens, dozens, hundreds even of alcohol bottles, and just like nothing's going to happen to them, which I guess is not that surprising, because you can kind of just do whatever you want these days. No one's going to hold you accountable. Even if you break into someone's house, they can't hurt you. So yeah, I mean, when you feel like there's going to be no consequences, are these guys just walking around with no fear? What's going on here?
Well, when COVID first started, I was working at the bank, and my biggest concern was that we were just going to get robbed every day because it was suddenly socially acceptable for people to wear masks. And a couple of years went by, and I realized at that point that the criminals were not as smart as maybe I thought they were. Because you could wear a mask. They don't even bother wearing a mask. At a time, if you were a criminal, this would be the greatest thing that ever happened to you. You're allowed to walk into a bank or into a liquor store and rummage through things and completely obscure your face, but they don't even bother doing that. And I think that just shows how brazen and unafraid of consequences these criminals really are. And stupid.
And the police were saying this is part of some bigger theft ring. I mean, is there some sort of big conspiracy going on here, or are people they can just walk anywhere they want, take what they want, and they feel like they could literally do whatever they want with no consequences?
Well, it's just you only need two people to have a conspiracy, right? And so in this case, on most of these videos that I've seen, you typically see more than two people. So I would say that probably qualifies as a theft ring. How large the criminal network happens to be is, I'm not entirely sure. I'm also curious, are they drinking this alcohol, or are they reselling it on a black market? And, that might be an investigative path for the police if they're looking to find these people.
Yeah, is black market alcohol a thing? I mean, you could just walk into a liquor store and buy it, so I don't know what the reasoning for that would be.
Yeah, I mean, liquor is expensive in Canada.
Mm. Yeah, largely because of how much tax we pay on it, right?
Yeah.
And that's another interesting thing. It's got different prices everywhere, every province, because of tax differences. But yeah, Walid, have you seen these videos circulating around? I mean, what's going on here? Are business owners concerned they're just going to get robbed blind and the police won't do nothing?
Well, I mean, I've seen quite a few videos of robbery, armed robbery, and stage robberies with multiple people coming out of vehicles in and out. But I think the ones that have been most absurd to me have been the LCBO ones happening in Ontario, and there have been multiple, of course, because like Alex said, I mean, no masks, broad daylight. I mean, I would say, in my opinion, that it may not be a smart move long term because their faces are out there, and there definitely will be social consequences at the very least. Especially if we do have a reform to our criminal justice system, and let's just say some future government lays the hammer down from top to bottom, which I definitely think there's a public appetite for. I really do think that if we're asking ourselves, what will it take to see a true reform to our justice system and bring back real consequences for crime, I think that these videos are going to be part of that formula, because what that will do is that will increase the public appetite. And the more people see this, not just conservatives, but all kinds of people, business owners, store clerks, people that go and purchase items from these stores, many people across the spectrum, and of course those that have families that are involved in retail as well. I mean, we all know someone who's worked in retail, if not ourselves, in the past. So I think that the environment of scrutiny will definitely become more and more hostile in the future, and therefore more supportive of whatever measures it takes to really deter criminals. Because what this really symbolizes to me, this scene that I've saw in that video, is the fact that they're very audacious, and maybe they're looking at our articles, maybe they're watching the news, maybe they're just seeing how easy it is to get away with all kinds of crimes. So I think that Canada's insecurity is clear, but it's becoming more clear to those public observers and voters that will hopefully in the future turn towards a policy, or at least towards supporting a policy that could perhaps see correction to this trend. Because really, I mean, this is as easy as it gets. You're walking into the store, reusable handbags, 3, 4 at a time, coming in, returning, coming in again. I mean, it really doesn't get sophisticated at all. This is simple, straight up theft, and unless there's a deterrence, I can't see this trend going anywhere soon.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight a few things from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. He said, quote, "I love the one, I think it was a year ago, when the guy in the LCBO, just a customer, stood up and held the thieves accountable. I'd love to meet that guy one day. He gave him a couple slugs in the head. They deserve a slug in the head every once in a while." And I just found this so ironic with that recent news we saw of that homeowner defending himself. You can't give a guy a couple slugs in the head if he breaks into your home, tries to kill you, rob you. But oh, if you see a guy robbing a liquor store, you can. I mean, you can't. These things can't be true at the same time. If that were the case, and you might be held accountable publicly by someone who sees you robbing a store without them being afraid of being charged, then yeah, we'd have a much different rule. We were kind of talking about that beforehand, like especially regarding drivers. Some drivers in Canada are so brazen, but I feel like it's different in the States, because if you try and run someone off the road, they might pull a gun on you and shoot you, literally. And we just don't have that level of public accountability, I think, in Canada. And this is the reason why you can literally walk out in broad daylight, do whatever you want, and not be held accountable.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about that, because I think that our legal team over at True North would appreciate me saying, if you find yourself in this situation, do not lug them in the head. Like you should. Like I honestly, I've worked in retail for many, many years, and the first thing you learn is if somebody's stealing something, just let it go. And the logic behind that is multifold, right? First of all, you want, first and foremost, for your employees to be safe. Secondly, most of these businesses are insured for theft. And thirdly, it's the police's job to hold these people responsible, not the employees of the retail establishment where the theft is occurring. And I think that's where everything breaks down, is that the police are not holding people accountable. Well, I shouldn't even say that. The police, even if they arrest them, they're typically out on bail the next day. So as Walid said, it's the criminal justice system that's falling short, I should say, in all of this, and very frustrating.
Yeah, the criminal justice system on so many levels, because these criminals are released on bail. So of course the same guys are committing the same crimes over and over because they can't be in jail. And then the police are like, why even bother arresting them? Because they're demoralized, because they arrest them and then they see the next guy, the same guy out on the street the very next day doing the same crime. It's like, I arrested them yesterday. Should I do it again? I got better things to do. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. But speaking of police agencies, for our next story, we might have more police to rely on all of a sudden, because the RCMP there is, they're using anime, I guess, to draw people in. We see there a cutout anime figure dressed in the RCMP's iconic red serge uniform. This was at a recruiting booth, but the RCMP, I guess, told True North that this had nothing to do with recruitment. They were just trying to unite Canada and Japan, I guess. I don't know. What was going on here?
Yeah, so this was happening earlier this summer, where this scene was taken, this picture. I think it was at the Japan-Canada Festival in Toronto a little earlier. So I'm not so familiar with anime myself personally, but I'm aware of the fact that the RCMP, in their statement to me, were very clear that, we kind of have nothing to do with this, but, this is the whole vibe of the festival, promoting Japanese-Canadian relations. Definitely a very interesting way to do so, for sure. But the RCMP basically claims no responsibility of creating that graphic or using it with the intention of recruiting. Or it was more so, I guess, with the intention of connecting with youth at the event. So perhaps, anime-loving kids, 15-year-old teenagers, whatever. The prop was also technically used as a photo opportunity at the booth. So, when people would walk by, they could take a selfie, take a photo, whatever. So it is, more of a prop to go along with the agenda of the event itself rather than the RCMP recruitment strategy. But, I've never seen any federal security agency, FBI, or any other major country security agency kind of do something like this with their branding, with their insignia, with their identity. So I guess we're special in that sense.
Yeah, sorry. I keep laughing because I'm just picturing. I don't know if you guys know Naruto and how he kind of runs with his arms behind his back there. I just keep picturing an RCMP officer running like that. I don't know if you could throw that GIF up on the screen there, but that would be funny. So if you haven't seen Naruto, he runs like crazily with his arms behind his back, and that's kind of what I guess bothers me a bit about this. We're not really emphasizing, not just in the RCMP, but in the armed forces, although they said this isn't a recruitment strategy, but still aren't emphasizing masculinity, which I think is the key to having strong soldiers. For example, the RCMP said it got more applications than it had in a decade at 17,600 last year, and that it also increased again this year to just over 20,000, which is great applications are increasing, but it doesn't really matter if the applications are coming all from unqualified individuals. What we need to see happen is the amount, and I don't have the data on this, but what matters is, of course, how many qualified people are applying, how many people that will pass your fitness test, your exams, etc. So applications at a baseline are, in my eyes, irrelevant, because it's like, are the right people applying? Are the people you want to be in the RCMP, in the armed forces, applying? If people who aren't going to pass these tests are applying, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference, right? So I don't know. I don't know if anime going forward, or maybe what you need there, if we're talking about like cartoons, is G.I. Joe. There you go. There's a masculine cartoon, first one that came to mind. So I don't know. Yeah, you guys think this is helping the RCMP with their numbers there?
Well, I think it speaks to the type of force that they're trying to put together, right? Like, I remember, I'm a little bit older than you guys. Maybe it was like 10 years ago. I was in Seattle, and the National Army was doing a recruitment drive at some event. And so they had video game booths set up, and I think it was Call of Duty or something. And that makes sense, right? Like, if you're looking to hire people to shoot guns, you should find kids who are interested in shooting guns. Now, I don't know what this anime character represents, but do they have any relation to policing at all? I have no idea. Is there any connection?
I don't know either. I don't know much about anime, Alex. You just did remind me of something. Like, for the Army and video games, there's not really a connection, I think, because, guys playing video games in their basement, maybe not our Army soldiers. But it did remind me of a movie that came out in 2023, Gran Turismo, which is based on a true story, where this like racing organization, like F1, not F1, but something like that, like seriously professional racing, found all the top racers on this game. So essentially just these nerdy kids with their wheels, like literally playing their Xbox 12 hours a day. And they invited them to become real racers because they're like, these guys are crazy. And then that's what the movie's about. It's about the story of this kid that they invited, and he actually became like a professional racer. So there definitely can be some crossover there. But as for this anime character, I'm not so sure. Anyways, yeah, no, it's been a pleasure talking with you guys today. Just remember, everything you heard today was off the record. Alex, I forgot to tell you at the start, man, this phrase, I'm such an idiot. So I get home and I'm reading the box. The whole thing. It says woman's right on it. It says women's race. And I said, I knew there was a reason that box was pink. So yeah, it's a bit tight because it's for women.
Oh, it's women's race.
Oh my God.
It did say right on the box woman, but I missed that when I was at Shoppers there. I was looking at other details. I was looking at
this feels a little tight.
Yeah, it's a woman's brace. So but hey, it does the trick.
Oh man.